Kindness without boundaries slowly turns into self-betrayal because it places other people's comfort above your own responsibility to grow, protect your energy, and honor your purpose. When you give without discernment, you begin to override your inner voice, ignoring the signals that tell you when something is misaligned. Over time, this pattern teaches you to silence your own needs, making self-neglect feel normal and self-sacrifice feel virtuous even when it is destructive. Every unguarded yes costs more than time. It costs focus and clarity. When your schedule is filled with obligations you never chose, your mind becomes scattered and reactive. Instead of directing your energy toward meaningful progress, you spend it responding to demands that pull you away from your priorities. What looks like kindness on the surface becomes a slow erosion of momentum beneath it. Without boundaries, emotional energy leaks in every direction. You carry other people's expectations, problems, and frustrations as if they are your responsibility. This constant emotional weight creates fatigue that rest alone cannot fix, because the exhaustion comes from misalignment, not effort. You are tired not because you are doing too much, but because you are doing too much of what does not matter to your purpose. Self-betrayal begins the moment you know what you should do, but choose something else to avoid discomfort. Each time you ignore that internal nudge to protect your time or speak honestly, you weaken trust in yourself. Over time, this broken self-trust leads to hesitation, self-doubt, and a quiet resentment that grows toward both yourself and the people you continue to overextend for. Time is the first resource drained by unbounded kindness, and it is the one you can never recover. Hours spent appeasing, explaining, and accommodating are hours not invested in skill development, vision, or execution. When days are consumed by other people's priorities, your own goals remain perpetually postponed, creating a cycle where potential exists but progress never materializes. Energy follows attention, and without boundaries, your attention is constantly fragmented. You move from conversation to conversation, task to task, request to request, never fully present or fully committed. This fragmentation reduces the quality of everything you do, making even simple tasks feel heavier than they should and diminishing the excellence you are capable of producing. Purpose requires protection to mature. When you allow unrestricted access to your life, purpose becomes diluted by noise, opinions, and distractions. Instead of moving with conviction, you begin to question your direction based on external reactions. The clearer your calling becomes, the more resistance you may face, and without boundaries, that resistance can derail you before results have time to form. Kindness without structure also creates unhealthy relationships built on convenience rather than mutual respect. People may grow accustomed to your availability without valuing your presence. This dynamic reinforces the belief that your worth is tied to what you provide rather than who you are, making it harder to step back without feeling guilt or fear of abandonment. As self-betrayal continues, resentment quietly replaces joy. You give with a smile, but internally feel depleted and unseen. This emotional contradiction creates internal conflict, where your actions no longer match your values. Living in this state long enough can disconnect you from enthusiasm, creativity, and the sense of meaning that once fueled your ambition. When time, energy, and purpose are consistently drained, life begins to feel busy yet unproductive. Movement exists, but progress does not. You expend effort daily but remain far from the outcomes you desire, trapped in cycles of obligation rather than intention. The cost of kindness without boundaries is not immediate failure, but the slow disappearance of the life you were meant to build. People-pleasing is rooted in fear because it is driven by the need for approval rather than alignment with truth. At its core, it is the fear of rejection, abandonment, or conflict that causes a person to shape their behavior around other people's expectations. Instead of acting from conviction, decisions are filtered through the question of how others will respond, slowly shifting control of life outward rather than inward. When fear is the motivator, reactions replace intentions. You respond to situations as they arise rather than deciding in advance who you are and what you stand for. Your schedule, emotions, and priorities are constantly adjusted to accommodate external pressures. This reactive mode keeps you busy but directionless, moving frequently without moving forward. People-pleasing trains the mind to scan the environment for signals of approval or disapproval. A raised eyebrow, a change in tone, or a delayed response becomes a source of anxiety. This hyper-awareness consumes mental energy that could be used for creativity, problem-solving, or strategic thinking, leaving you mentally exhausted without tangible progress. Living reactively also weakens personal identity. When behavior changes depending on who is present, consistency disappears. Over time, it becomes difficult to know what you actually want, believe, or value because choices have been made primarily to maintain harmony rather than integrity. This internal confusion creates hesitation and self-doubt in moments that require decisive action. Fear-based pleasing creates short-term comfort at the expense of long-term growth. Avoiding difficult conversations may preserve peace in the moment, but it allows underlying issues to fester. Opportunities to establish respect, clarity, and leadership are missed because discomfort feels more threatening than stagnation. Instead of setting priorities, people pleasers inherit them. Other people's needs, urgencies, and emotions dictate the flow of the day. This constant interruption fragments focus and prevents deep work, making it difficult to commit fully to goals that require sustained attention and disciplined effort. The reactive lifestyle also affects emotional stability. When approval becomes the measuring stick for worth, emotions rise and fall based on external validation. Praise brings temporary relief, while criticism or indifference triggers disproportionate distress. This emotional dependency removes the internal anchor necessary for resilience and confidence. Fear-based behavior subtly communicates a lack of self-trust. Each time you override your instincts to keep someone comfortable, you reinforce the belief that your perspective is less valuable than theirs. Over time, this erodes confidence and makes it harder to assert boundaries or make independent decisions without seeking reassurance. People-pleasing often masquerades as kindness, but its true cost is authenticity. By constantly adapting to avoid friction, you sacrifice honesty in expression and clarity in direction. Relationships built on this foundation may appear peaceful, but they lack depth, respect, and genuine connection. Living reactively instead of intentionally keeps life in a state of maintenance rather than creation. You manage circumstances rather than design outcomes. Days are filled with responses instead of progress, and momentum remains elusive because fear continues to dictate behavior instead of purpose, values, and conscious choice. High-level success begins with clear standards because standards define what you accept, what you tolerate, and what you refuse to allow into your life. Without standards, decisions are made emotionally and inconsistently, leading to unpredictable outcomes. Clear standards create structure, and structure removes confusion, allowing you to move with confidence instead of hesitation. Standards act as filters for opportunities, relationships, and commitments. When your standards are low or undefined, everything gets access to you, including distractions that dilute focus and drain energy. High standards protect your time and attention, ensuring that only what aligns with your goals earns a place in your life. This selectivity is not arrogance, it is intentional design. Discipline transforms standards from ideas into lived behavior. Knowing what you want means nothing without the daily execution that supports it. Discipline bridges the gap between vision and reality by turning consistent action into a non-negotiable habit. It removes reliance on motivation and replaces it with systems that function regardless of mood or circumstance. Without discipline, potential remains theoretical. Talent, intelligence, and ambition lose power when they are not anchored to consistent effort. Discipline compounds small actions over time, creating results that appear extraordinary but are built on ordinary behaviors repeated without exception. This consistency separates those who wish from those who achieve. The courage to say no is a critical expression of both standards and discipline. Every yes consumes resources, and resources are finite. Saying no protects the energy required to pursue long-term goals. It is an acknowledgement that focus is more valuable than approval and progress matters more than popularity. Saying no often triggers discomfort because it challenges expectations. People may question your choices, withdraw support, or misinterpret your intentions. High-level success demands the emotional strength to withstand this resistance without retreating. Growth rarely feels convenient, and clarity often invites opposition before it earns respect. Clear standards reduce decision fatigue. When boundaries are established, choices become simpler because they are measured against predefined criteria. This mental clarity frees cognitive energy for creativity, strategy, and execution, allowing you to operate at a higher level with less internal conflict. Discipline also builds self-trust. Each time you follow through on a commitment to yourself, confidence increases. This internal reliability becomes a foundation for leadership, influence, and resilience. You no longer need constant reassurance because your actions consistently reinforce your identity. High-level success requires delayed gratification. Discipline teaches you to prioritize long-term rewards over immediate comfort. Clear standards remind you why sacrifice is necessary, and saying no ensures that short-term pleasures do not sabotage future outcomes. This alignment keeps momentum steady even when results are not immediately visible. When standards are clear, discipline is practiced, and no is spoken without guilt. Life begins to operate by design rather than default. Effort becomes focused, progress becomes measurable, and outcomes begin to reflect intention instead of chance, creating a path where excellence is not accidental but inevitable. Not everyone deserves equal access to your time because time is a non-renewable resource that once spent can never be recovered. When you give it away without discernment, you unintentionally communicate that your priorities are flexible and your goals are secondary. Protecting your time is not selfish, it is a recognition that your life has direction, and that direction requires deliberate investment. Attention is even more valuable than time because it determines where your energy flows. What you consistently focus on shapes your thoughts, emotions, and actions. Allowing everyone unrestricted access to your attention fragments your focus and weakens your ability to think deeply, decide clearly, and act decisively. Excellence demands concentration, and concentration requires boundaries. Your inner world is the most sensitive and powerful part of you. It holds your beliefs, fears, dreams, and unfinished thoughts. Sharing it indiscriminately exposes your vision to misunderstanding, criticism, and doubt before it is fully formed. Not everyone has the capacity or the intention to protect what is still in development. Equal access creates unequal outcomes. When people with different values, discipline levels, and intentions influence you equally, internal conflict increases. You begin to question decisions that once felt clear and hesitate in moments that require conviction. Selective access preserves internal alignment and reinforces confidence. Some people consume more than they contribute. They require constant explanation, reassurance, or emotional labor, leaving you depleted after every interaction. Without boundaries, these dynamics become habitual, slowly normalizing exhaustion and making productivity feel like a struggle rather than a natural outcome of focused effort. Limiting access does not mean withdrawing from connection. It means redefining it. Relationships thrive on mutual respect, not unlimited availability. When access is earned rather than assumed, interactions become more intentional and meaningful, fostering depth instead of dependency. Your future self depends on the decisions you make about access today. Every conversation, distraction, and emotional investment either moves you closer to your goals or quietly pulls you away. By being selective, you ensure that your daily environment supports growth instead of stagnation. Not everyone understands your vision, and that is not a flaw in the vision. Early-stage ideas are fragile and require belief more than feedback. Protecting your inner world allows confidence to mature without interference from skepticism or negativity disguised as concern. Boundaries also reveal character. Those who respect your limits demonstrate emotional maturity and self-awareness. Those who resist them often benefit from your lack of them. Observing how people respond to your boundaries provides clarity about who should remain close and who should remain distant. When you control access to your time, attention, and inner world, life becomes quieter but more powerful. Noise decreases, clarity increases, and decisions feel grounded rather than pressured. This intentional isolation creates the conditions necessary for focus, growth, and sustained progress toward the life you are building. Rejection often feels like loss because it challenges the human desire for acceptance, yet in many cases it is evidence that growth is taking place. When you begin to evolve, your values, standards, and direction change, and not everyone can or should follow you into that new space. What appears to be rejection is frequently a natural separation caused by movement rather than a verdict on your worth. Growth introduces contrast. As you elevate your thinking and behavior, misalignment becomes more visible. People who are comfortable with the old version of you may feel unsettled by change, not because you are wrong, but because familiarity has been disrupted. Their withdrawal reflects the distance created by growth, not a deficiency in your character. Rejection exposes dependency. When approval is removed, you are forced to confront whether your identity was built on external validation or internal conviction. This moment of discomfort strengthens self-definition, pushing you to anchor confidence within rather than borrowing it from others' opinions. Alignment with growth requires decisions that challenge existing dynamics. Boundaries, higher standards, and new priorities often reduce accessibility. Some relationships were sustained by availability rather than mutual respect, and when availability changes, the connection weakens. This shift reveals which bonds were conditional and which were resilient. Rejection can act as a filter that removes distractions from your path. As certain people or opportunities fall away, mental and emotional space is created. This space allows focus to sharpen and energy to be redirected toward pursuits that match your evolving purpose and potential. Failure implies stagnation or regression, while rejection often accompanies progress. When you pursue meaningful goals, resistance is inevitable because growth disrupts comfort zones. If no rejection is present, it may indicate that no meaningful change is occurring and that you remain within the boundaries of what is familiar and expected. Loss suggests something valuable has been taken, but growth-driven rejection often removes what no longer fits. What leaves was incompatible with where you are going. Holding on to everything from the past limits expansion and creates internal conflict between who you were and who you are becoming. Rejection also strengthens discernment. It teaches you to differentiate between voices that contribute to growth and those that resist it. This awareness refines decision making and reduces the influence of opinions that lack understanding or alignment with your direction. As growth continues, resilience develops. Each experience of rejection builds emotional independence, reducing fear of disapproval. Confidence becomes rooted in purpose rather than popularity, allowing you to move forward without constant reassurance or explanation. Alignment with growth transforms rejection into confirmation. The absence of universal acceptance signals that boundaries are active and direction is clear. Instead of interpreting rejection as failure or loss, it becomes evidence that transformation is underway and that movement toward a higher level is actively reshaping your environment. Strong boundaries protect focus by creating clear limits around where your attention is allowed to go. When boundaries are weak, interruptions become constant and priorities blur, pulling your mind in multiple directions at once. Focus requires uninterrupted space, and boundaries provide that space by reducing unnecessary access, noise, and distraction. Focus is not just about concentration, but about direction. Boundaries help you stay aligned with what truly matters instead of reacting to whatever is loudest or most urgent. By deciding in advance what deserves your attention, you eliminate hesitation and conserve mental energy that would otherwise be spent constantly reassessing decisions. Energy is preserved when you are not repeatedly explaining, defending, or justifying your choices. Weak boundaries invite negotiation, while strong boundaries communicate clarity. This clarity reduces emotional friction and prevents energy loss caused by guilt, overcommitment, and people-pleasing behaviors that drain enthusiasm and resilience. Emotional energy is often the most depleted resource in high-performing individuals. Without boundaries, you absorb other people's stress, expectations, and urgency as if they are your responsibility. Strong boundaries create emotional distance where necessary, allowing you to remain calm, objective, and steady even in demanding environments. Physical energy is also affected by boundaries. Overcommitment leads to fatigue, irregular routines, and neglect of recovery. Boundaries protect rest, sleep, and health by preventing schedules from being overloaded. When the body is supported, consistency becomes sustainable rather than exhausting. Boundaries reinforce discipline by turning priorities into non-negotiables. When limits are clearly defined, habits are easier to maintain because fewer decisions compete for attention. This structure creates rhythm and stability, making progress predictable instead of sporadic. Long-term success depends on consistency, and consistency depends on preservation. Boundaries ensure that energy is not wasted on activities that offer little return. By narrowing focus to high-impact acts, strong boundaries also shape identity. Each time you honor a limit, you reinforce the belief that your time and goals matter. This self-respect strengthens confidence and reduces susceptibility to external pressure, making it easier to stay committed during challenging phases of growth. Resistance often arises when boundaries are introduced. Some people interpret limits as rejection, but this resistance is temporary. Over time, clarity earns respect and expectations adjust. Those who remain are aligned with your direction, and those who leave create space for greater alignment. When focus is protected and energy is preserved, momentum builds naturally. Daily actions accumulate without constant burnout or distraction. Boundaries quietly remove friction from the process, allowing long-term success to unfold as a result of sustained effort, clear direction, and disciplined execution.